A terrorist bombing in Deir leaves 9 martyred and wounds more than 100. Border guards stop 2 infiltration attempts into Syria from Turkish and Lebanese territories. And a symposium on physicians, writers and poets held at the Geographical Society in Damascus. Good afternoon, this is news in English from the Syrian Arab television in Damascus. A booby-trapped car blew up at morning, claiming the lives of 9 at Masakin Ghazi Ayash neighborhood in Deir Ezzor city. The terrorist blast caused big damages to houses and facilities surrounding the site. The suicide bomber drove the booby-trapped car into the building of a public establishment, causing the death of 9 civilians and the guards and injuring 100 others. Some of them seriously, including a 4-year-old child and a 26-year-old woman. The terrorist bombing caused cracks in the buildings, which are within 100 meters distance from the bombing site. The blast left a hole with 5 meters radius and 2 meters depth. The explosives used in the bombing are estimated at 1,000 kilograms. A team from the UN Observers Mission visited the site of the bombing. Competent authorities in Deir Ezzor Governorate seized in cooperation with civilians and residents a large quantity of weapons, ammunition, explosives, and raw materials used for making explosive devices in Al-Jbeli neighborhood. The confiscated weapons also included automatic rifles, machine guns, sniper rifles, mines, dynamite, fertilizers used for making explosives. Authorities also foiled an attempt to detonate a booby-trapped car in the governorate and arrested the persons involved. An armed terrorist group detonated an explosive device planted earlier in a telephone booth on the venue leading to Al-Abbas Mosque in Berzeh when worshippers were coming out of the mosque. The bombing killed 1 civilian and injured 14 passers-by, including women and children. The wounded were taken to Ibn Nafis Hospital for treatment. Meanwhile, a team from the UN International Observers Mission visited the site and talked to people of the neighborhood. Armed terrorist groups continue to plant explosive devices in streets and nearby buildings to target civilians and law enforcement. Members of the engineering units at the Syrian Arab Army have successfully defused some of these devices. A closer look in the following report.
Members of the engineering units at the Syrian Arab Army are unknown soldiers who risk their lives caring for their people. They bravely try to defuse the landmines and explosive devices that were planted by terrorists. Sometimes they are targeted by terrorists offering their lives for the sake of their people and homeland. In Hamas streets, terrorists continue to plant explosives to kill defenseless people. Members of the engineering units dismantled these explosives scores of times. 2 explosives were detonated at Al-Bahra and Al-Allaf crossroads, causing the death of Muaz al-Dahir and the wounding of 2 officers and several members of the engineering units. Another device was planted by the criminals near Al-Sha'ar crossroad, while members of the engineering units were trying to defuse it. It exploded, causing the death of non-commissioned officer Hassan al-Hadiri and the wounding of several others. Idlib city was also one of the main targets of terrorists who planted explosives in various areas. In Al-Thuluth neighborhood, members of the engineering units dismantled an explosive device in the presence of the international observers. In Deir Ezzor, 2 explosives were dismantled in Al-Madlaji crossroad in the presence of the international observers.
At dawn today, the border patrols in Idlib Governorate stopped an infiltration attempt made by a terrorist group. They were coming in from the Turkish territories to Syria through the Fawaz village in Jisr al-Shughur area. A source in the governorate told reporters that the authorities managed to kill and wound a number of the armed men and they seized their weapons, while the rest of the terrorists fled away towards the Turkish territories. In Homs Governorate, the authorities also foiled an infiltration attempt of a terrorist group from the Lebanese lands to Syria near Al-Armuta village last night. The news reporters quoted a source in the governorate as saying that the border patrols wounded a number of the terrorist group members as the rest of them fled towards the Lebanese territories. Eyewitnesses say that the ambulances have been seen in Wadi Khalid heading to take the injured towards Lebanon. General Robert Maud, head of the UN observation mission to Syria, said the mission was working at finding a successful way to be deployed in Syria thanks to the advanced level of cooperation by the Syrian government, the UN presidency, and the contributing countries. Addressing a press conference in Damascus, General Maud said that he would give permission to move from the first stage of the mission, which includes pre-deployment arrangements and planning, to the stage of implementation.
The mission itself is on the way to achieve a successful surge deployment, and this is thanks to an advanced level of cooperation from the Syrian government, as well as unrelenting support from the United Nations headquarters. And we will do our best, we will do more than our best to try to create situations locally on the ground where there is a reduction of violence and a movement along the political track. Any stakeholder inside Syria and outside Syria needs to decide to do this with us.
Under-Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operations Hervé Ladsous said that the Security Council, which represents the supreme will of the international community, decided to send an observation mission to Syria. Thus, he has come here to see how mission goes. Ladsous said that the current mission was sent in an unprecedented short period of time. Ladsous expressed his gratitude to General Maud and his colleagues in the UN observation mission to Syria for the work they do and would lead to stopping violence and supporting Annan's mission. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said that Al-Qaeda is responsible for the twin terrorist bombings that targeted Al-Qazzaz area in Damascus, claiming the lives of hundreds of civilians and military personnel. During a youth meeting held at the UN headquarters in New York, Moon said that he thinks that Al-Qaeda is responsible for the horrible terrorist bombings which took place a few days ago, leading to serious consequences. On his part, spokesman for Annan, Ahmed Fawzi, said that Annan is heading to Syria soon and renewed his call for all sides to halt violence and engage in a political dialogue. The Tunisian authorities
مع شخص في سوريا ده اسمه أبو أحمد. هو
نعيمة بن مبروك، مواليد 11/6/1990، مولود بخزان، علاقة بشخص اسمه أبو طلحة. فهمت؟ أبو طلحة ذا عنده مجموعة جهادية، فهمت، في سوريا، عنده علاقة بتنظيم القاعدة. وهو قال لنا هبطوا لمدينة أنطاكيا. كي هبطنا لمدينة أنطاكيا عاودنا اتصلنا به، قلنا له رانا وصلنا وكذا، قال له مش نعطيكم رقم نتاع مهرب.
The influx of Al-Qaeda members to Syria and the smuggling of weapons to terrorist groups in Syria have been circulated by various media outlets. The Lebanese Al-Khabar Daily has disclosed security information about the arrival of 24 people from Al-Qaeda organization in Syria. They fled Ain al-Halwi camp in Lebanon at the order of their leader Ayman Zawahiri. The news about Al-Qaeda members' arrival coincided with another related to the number of Lebanese extremists who are involved in armed operations in Syria, amounted to 500. The Daily said that a number of them returned to Lebanon because they lack fight experience. The Tunisian newspaper Al-Sarih said that the Tunisian security forces disclosed a plan for training extremist religious groups to be recruited and sent to Syria. The newspaper said that the Tunisian intelligence recently obtained photos and tapes recording secret meetings for Al-Qaeda members to plan operations in Tunisia and abroad. The USUBA news agency also quoted a Tunisian diplomat in London as saying that 50 Tunisian fighters traveled to Syria and the Tunisian Islamic Al-Nahda movement opened centers for recruiting volunteers to be sent to Syria.
symposium titled The Physicians, Writers and Poets was held at the Geographical Society in Damascus with the participation of a number of researchers and authors. A closer look in the following report.
The symposium included a lecture by researcher Muhammad Marwan Murad, in which he talked about physicians who were also talented poets. These include Dr. Joseph Kallas, born in Damascus in 1920, Dr. Abdussalam Al-Ujaili, born in Raqqa 1920. He wrote more than 40 books. Most of them were translated to foreign languages. The list also includes Dr. Abdul Rahman Al-Shahbandar, Dr. Rida Saeed, Murshid Khatir, and Dr. Qutayba Al-Shihabi, who documented the works of those who were physicians and writers at the same time.
محاضرتنا في الجمعية الجغرافية عن الأطباء العرب الشعراء.
My lecture was about the physicians who wrote poetry. Poets are sometimes specialized, but we have poets who were physicians and ambassadors. In fact, the genes of poetry exist in all Arab people. I talked about a number of physicians who excelled in poetry writing and wrote poems in various themes, especially national topics.
The material aspects of civilization vanish, but the depth of culture and creativity remain forever. Creativity and deeply rooted culture are the main features of our civilization, and colonialist states are trying to destroy these features and distort our great civilization.
I am very happy to attend a lecture by Mr. Muhammad Murad, and he is going to give us an overall look about some of the famous medical doctors who were at the same time poets. This is one of the cultural ideas, identities of our country, that is, they were all encyclopedical genies.
The lecture, it's about some of the Arabic doctors who were poets, and they really have affected our hearts and have left really a good print on our history and in our hearts also. And Mr. Marwan, so thankful, he's going to present some of these poets.
Reference should be made to the fact that world literature includes many physicians who gathered medicine and literature such as Keats John, Oliver Gold, and Anthony Chekhov.